Hello, and welcome to my presentation about bog turtles and the preservation plan. So this is my third attempt. I'm hopeful that I have a good interpreter. It seems like I have a good interpreter this time. So when bog turtles, they have been reduced in numbers for the last 30 years, actually 50% because of habitat damage and because of the illegal pet trade. So these impacts have, and because more people, so their habitat is shrinking. My research question, there are three. The first question is, what is required for the bog turtles basking in the sun and hibernation? What type of shelter? What type of foraging? And egg nesting, their habitat to support a stable number of bog turtles. The second question is it worth it to keep livestock on preserved land and for grazing purposes? And how much land or surrounding the pond or the water can support a bog turtle population? So those are my three questions. While presenting, I will cover the responses to these three questions. So first, I'd like to talk about bog turtles. They tend to eat bugs, slugs, worms, crayfish, frogs, snakes, snail, carrion, millipedes, small berries, sedges, sedge seeds, and young cattail shoots. Duckweed, as well as duckweed. They tend to have a lifespan of 40 to 50 years, and they stay in the same habitat where they were born. They never migrate out of their birthplace. Basking in the sun, they tend to do during the spring the most, as well as mating. They prefer to sit in the sun like in a tussock, which is like sedge or rushes or skunk cabbage. That is the ecological umbrella. I will show you what the plants look like so you're able to envision them. For nesting, it's during the summer, and they tend to build nests above ground, 4 to 5 inches above ground. They prefer dryness and also must have sunlight to keep the eggs warm. Typically, bog turtles tend to lay their eggs in sphagnum moss or clumps of sedge. But the important part is that it is above water and in the sun. My project focuses here in Maryland. In Maryland, you can see the areas where bog turtles are in the northeast area. There are two different populations. There are northern and southern, some in South Carolina, but mine are the northern bog turtles, which are associated with turtles in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Bog turtles, their habitat, they tend to move between water and land. They require small areas of wetlands like bogs, meadows, and fens. The size of their habitat is 1 acre. Can be anywhere between 1 acre or one small area and 5 acres. But again, the importance of the sun. It has to be an open environment where the sun can get in, and they tend to only move for foraging, for breeding, and for looking for their favorite hiding place. Occasionally, they use straw, um, you know, for streams for transportation, but if there is a flood, then they go upland. Bog turtles tend to move an average of 2 to 36 feet per day. You know, their area is very small, which is why when I was interviewing with Scott, he operates the Maryland U.S. Wildlife. He said that bog turtles were strange because they stay in a very small area, unlike other wildlife. They prefer to stay in a smaller area, and that is very interesting. Before I begin explaining about my preserve design, I'd like you to envision what it would look like and the different plants. As I mentioned, a small vegetation like jewel weeds. The flowers are orange, they're very beautiful. And the skunk cabbage, I mentioned that and said that was the favorite thing for a bog turtle to rest on. It smells awful, but it's the first plant that will come up in the spring. And also bone sets, the flowers. If you see the two pictures, the soft rushes, they look like grass. And the second is tussocks. Tussock seeds or sedge, they like to get on the top of that. And that's their favorite for basking in the sun. This is an example of what a turtle looks like on resting on sphagnum moss. And the other is a strussock sedge. So you can see these two pictures, how the turtles are on the top of those two grass forms. So before I explain my preserve design, I want you to get an idea of what a bog and a fen look like. So a bog and a fen, they require peat. So do you see the black section in my image? It takes 1,000 years for that decomposition of plants to happen to make 1 meter of peat moss. You know, compression is very important. This is very important for bogs and fens. Bogs tend to have low oxygen rates, you know, for the peat underneath of them, and there is a high acidic level. The fens are the opposite. They are high in alkaline, usually above a 7 pH. If you see the sphagnum moss, that's a bog because it's highly acidic. However, if you see a fen, you'll see a variety of different plants because, you know, so woods can thrive, different plants can thrive. So a bog, the area tends to surround a water source. A fen is an island with water within it and without. So that's the turtle's favorite home. My old design, my old preserve design, I had many different bogs scattered throughout. I realized that there was too much, not really good for the turtles, as they'll stay in one area, so the chances of habitat destruction are great. Now it's smaller, it's split into three biospheres, the fen and the bog. And you can see that I use this line to represent the stream that comes from the dam. I was worried about climate change in the future and that the area will dry up. So I figured that the constantly running water source would allow the habitat to continue. So you can see for corridors to help the turtles be able to move within the habitat. Um, so I've designed it, to help the turtles, and also parking to help researchers or workers. My preserve is not open to the public because if it is, then there'll be a higher possibility. So the future impact for these bog turtles include predators, foxes, raccoons, destroy their nests and eggs. Close canopied, so that means that the vegetation grows over and stops the sun from shining through. The turtles would then leave that habitat if that, or disease, pathogens. So that is my concern because one disease destroy the whole colony of bog turtles. Invasion of exotic species, plant species, animal species also destroy their habitat. And land use patterns, development, and will also pose a threat to the bog turtle. So the worst is the illegal one out of the conservation pool, so they can't bring it back east. Now we're trying to, there's a high chance that the area or drought, will cause the turtles. My sustainability, I believe I want to set up device to track on the turtles so we can monitor them, see where, as their numbers are so threatened. Also, it will help us to find a turtle if someone. Also, plant control, like invasive species, use weed killer and herbicides, and make sure that the canopy remains open so that the sun can break through. Also, we'll work with law enforcement to make sure that there's communication so that if any of the turtles are stolen, we can try law enforcement right away. And hopefully that will improve. Also cameras so that we can monitor cars and possibly. If the water floods, we want to be able to save the turtles for their decimated. 95% of that they can receive remuneration, letting us use. Also need to educate the public about bog turtles. Again, I want to keep my preserve private. So in conclusion, bog turtles is not recovering. They are not a recovering species. We're still losing high numbers because of the land use and adding the predation, climate change, and illegal trade. So the best we can do is try to protect the bog turtles before they are extinct. Questions, I answer them. However, there is one I haven't answered. Livestock. Is it important for us to farm turtles, or create an area? I talked to Scott, and he said that we don't, as long as the bogs and the fens are healthy, and the habitat is open. So that's my preservation. For listening to my, hope the interpreter did a good job. Goodbye.